I try to stray away from using the term hidden gem. I feel like it's become overused and more of a meme at this point, which is a shame because I think that term perfectly encapsulates a good chunk of the Saturn's vast library. One game that fits that mold to me is Zero Divide The Final Conflict, a one-on-one 3D fighting game released on November 20th, 1997 as a Sega Saturn exclusive. Developed and published by Zoom, the game company, not the video chat people, The Final Conflict is the third and final game in the Zero Divide trilogy, with the first two being exclusive to the Sony PlayStation. The game features a roster of cyber warriors fighting in cyberspace. On paper, it does sound pretty generic in a way and probably wouldn't get a second glance from the untrained eye, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Zero Divide is one of the deepest fighting games on the Saturn, and one that left an incredibly big impression on me. Zero Divide starts with an intro sequence that genuinely surprised me. Listen, full disclosure, I'm running this game on an ODE, or an optical disc emulator, installed in one of my Saturns. I'm no stranger to coming across ROMs for games that have weird little custom intros mentioning whoever cracked the ROM and put it online. So imagine my surprise when I boot this game up for the first time and see this screen. I really thought I got a cracked Saturn ISO, but no, that's just how the game starts, with it then seamlessly transitioning into the title screen. At this point, I realized that I was in for something really special. Zero Divide features your standard single-player arcade and time attack mode, versus mode, a robust training mode, and a way to watch saved replays. There's also a story option which gives you the backstory to the entire series up to this point. This being the only entry on the Saturn, the devs decided to condense the plot of the first two games into here. It is all in Japanese, so it's difficult to really give you a proper synopsis of what's going on. And sadly, good luck finding much in the way of info on these games on the English-speaking web. Fortunately, that's what Google translates for, so here's what I'm able to parse. You have a roster of 10 different fighters, or as the game calls them, offensive programs that live on a worldwide computer network. That cool intro sequence I mentioned earlier is actually a plea from another program, Zulu, who has randomly appeared to protect Extol, a destructive offensive program that is the main baddie of the series. The thing is though, Zulu doesn't want to protect Extol, so he sends out a message for the other offensive programs to come and kill both him and Extol. There seems to be a lot of other themes going on here about existentialism and the triumph of the human spirit. It may be a bit pretentious, but I gotta say, the devs really went for it here. They tried telling this big grandiose story in a fighting game with cyber robots. I can only wonder how effective the story they're trying to tell really is, if it wasn't for the language barrier getting in the way. Anyways, the single player mode has you fighting your way through the cyber network to reach Zulu. In between matches, you're given this obtuse looking screen, but it's here where you can actually choose the order in which you fight your opponents. You're only given 3 to choose from at a time, and they're always in the same grouping, but it's a nice little way of adding some variety on repeat playthroughs. The fighting in Zero Divide will feel very familiar to anyone who's played Virtua Fighter. You have a punch, kick, and a block button, as well as a dedicated evade button to sidestep, making this a truly 3D fighter. When you first hop into a match though, it doesn't quite feel the same as VF, or Fighting Vipers for that matter. I certainly wouldn't call it slow, but the game just kinda feels stiff. It doesn't give off the impression that moves will naturally flow into each other seamlessly. Part of me wants to believe that this also has to do with the game's camera, since there's a bit of rigidness to its movement when fighting up close. It all genuinely feels pretty uninviting at first, but I implore you to stick with it. Your first few rounds in single player are really gonna suck, but once you learn a character and get a feel for this game's quirks, you'll find a 3D fighter that is as rich and deep as any of its contemporaries. This is where Zero Divide's robust training mode comes into play. You're given plenty of options to mess around with, as well as full command lists for each fighter in the pause menu, which is a very welcome sight for a fighting game from this era. What ended up helping me the most was the input data that appears at the bottom of the screen. It gives you a way better understanding of how to properly time your inputs for certain combos. And yeah, while most top tier fighting games nowadays have stuff like this as standard, Zero Divide had this all the way back in 1997. Once you find a character you can jive with and get a handle on things, everything just clicks into place. Zero Divide offers a truly sublime fighting experience that handsomely rewards those who put in the time. The way that moves just flow into each other once you finally nailed it is so satisfying. And it'll make you want to keep pushing to learn bigger combo strings, learn more characters, and figure out new ways to take advantage of the game's systems. The arenas you fight in also add in a lot of fun variety. Each one has a unique layout, with some having a mixture of both walls and chances for ring outs. If fights reach the edge of the arena, you can slip off and your dude will actually grab for the ledge, allowing you to move to the side and get back on. This can also lead to some pretty ridiculous moments when trying to ledge guard. I ended up accidentally running off the map more often than I'd care to admit. Another neat little thing is your fighter's armor can break off over the course of the match. It doesn't really have any effect on gameplay, but adds a cool little visual to your matches. It also helps that there's more than just the fighting to love about this game. What initially drew me into Zero Divide was its presentation. Firstly, it's a 60 FPS Saturn game, which we all love to see. And second, I absolutely love the design aesthetic of this game. The menus, the characters, its otherworldly backgrounds, and the incredible soundtrack. It's a game I'm always excited to boot up and get whisked away into its world. The game even has a few little secret extras baked in. You can unlock the 2 ending boss characters to play, as well as a little cat dude named Nico, or Neko, who is the mascot for Zoom. He's also featured in a secret whack-a-mole minigame hidden in the key config menu. Now, I would be remiss if I don't bring up this game's forebearer, Zero Divide 2 on PlayStation. See, that game and the Final Conflict were actually released just months apart from each other, and a good number of assets, primarily the music, are shared between the 2 games. VC Decide on YouTube has made a side-by-side comparison video of these 2 games, which I'll link in the description below. When comparing the 2, the Final Conflict on Saturn may seem like a bit of a downgrade, but the way I see it, the devs really built this installment with the Saturn's strengths in mind, and it manages to hold its own on a system fully stacked with great fighters. I've got to mention the soundtrack again, because this is hands down one of the best game soundtracks on the Saturn. Akihiro Okawa put out some absolute bangers with this, and it's just masterclass stuff. Also, if you end up liking this, you should go listen to the Flag to Flag soundtrack on Dreamcast. Same dev, same composer. You're in for a real treat. I adore everything about this game. From the moment I first saw this game online to when I finally got to play it myself, it has delivered for me on all fronts. Zero Divide: The Final Conflict is up there as one of my all-time favorite Sega Saturn games. With its deep and satisfying gameplay, rock-solid performance, and a presentation that just oozes style, it truly is the coolest fighting game you've never played.